Hello everyone, hello and welcome. I think I hit the live button just a little bit too soon. I didn't quite have the camera adjusted. Anyway, welcome. And I'm probably surprising a lot of you that I am live, considering it is Christmas Day for folks who celebrate or observe that. But welcome everyone to the new moon solar eclipse. This is why we're live in Sagittarius guided intention setting practice. This is for the new moon solar eclipse, which will actually be tomorrow, the 26th is when it's happening exact. So we're doing this just a day ahead of schedule, excuse me. And so for those of you who are maybe new to the broadcast, I'm Phaedra. I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick, Physick, Astrology. Hi, welcome. So I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice, and my practice really revolves around helping you reconnect with your soul purpose and remembering why you came into this world to begin with, into this life to begin with. And my aim with these broadcasts really is to provide guidance for you on how we can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to affect our lives in a positive way. And I know this is a holiday and all, and I know that the eclipse is not exact until tomorrow. We're live because precisely it is an eclipse, and because it is such a significant eclipse in terms of the astrology that's taking place right now. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit more detail here in a few minutes. But as I was saying, I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice. And so what that means is that I use the Fagan-Bradley zodiac, not the traditional tropical zodiac that most Western astrologers use. And so you are going to want to know your chart according to the Fagan-Bradley zodiac. And so hold on real quick. I'm going to refresh my feed here. We'll see if we maintain signal. Looks like maybe we will. So I can pull up the broadcast here on my laptop, and I'm going to drop a link in the comments for those of you who might not have your sidereal natal chart. You're going to want to know your rising sign. You're going to want to know your sun sign. You're probably going to want to know the degree of your sun, the degree of your ascendant, and possibly the degree of your moon. Those are particular degrees you might want to look at today. And you might just want to have it handy in case you happen to have planets or points at any of the sensitive degrees that we're going to be talking about later in the broadcast. There you go. You can use that handy dandy online chart calculator at mystickphysick.com/sidereal tools to find out your sidereal placements, excuse me, so that you can follow along with the broadcast. And so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to explore your big why, right? We're going to explore your big why as it relates to what are you really aiming for? And what is it that you need most for your own personal growth and expansion? What lesson would most serve your growth and your highest good? This is a new moon solar eclipse. It's a really powerful new moon opportunity for starting something big, something significant that could have an impact over the coming year or longer. Something significant that could have an impact in many, many, many areas of life at once. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as well. But this eclipse is December 26th, and it's going to be felt very strongly during the week before and the week after the eclipse. I did not grab, hold on, let me grab it. I want to give you a link. And I want to make sure that it's easy to get back to this tab. I forgot to grab this link from the website. So I just did a broadcast. I don't remember what day exactly. On the 16th, it looks like. I just did a broadcast of the Sidereal Insights Astro update. What's the easiest way to get to it? There's not really an easy way to get to it. I know an easy way. I'll get it for you. Anyway, you'll want this link because this broadcast we talked about specific dates and degrees of specific signs that you want to be aware of and keep your eye on. Partly related to this eclipse that we're experiencing today, and also partly related to the eclipse that we're going to be having early in January. So if you can hold on for me. What I'm going to do is get you a link to that broadcast in case you need to watch it. There may be some dates that will be relevant for you over the span of about a 5-month stretch of time. And so we're talking about dates that you probably want to make a note of on your calendar or in your planner, because by the time they hit, you might not necessarily have them on your radar in terms of remembering that you need to keep your eye on these dates. But these are eclipse dates, so they're sensitive dates if you're going to be affected by the eclipse personally, either this one today or the one coming up in January. So here we go. I'm going to give you the link to that broadcast. Sorry, we're kind of getting derailed just for a moment because I wanted to have that ready for you and I did not have it ready. I totally forgot about it. Anyway, so that is the last broadcast. We go over dates and degrees that are in effect, I want to say from like September, October onwards to February of next year. So watch it because you'll need it not only for today, but also for January 10th. So this particular new moon, it activates a stellium or crown of stars. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the term stellium. It's usually more than 3 planets occupying a sign is considered a stellium. And we had a very similar new moon solar eclipse earlier this year, January 4th. We had a new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius at 20 degrees, and it also activated a stellium. And so what has happened with these eclipses is that they set off events that trigger changes in your life, and these changes in your life end up affecting many, many, many different areas of your life, more areas of life than they might normally would as more mundane changes, simply because the effects are felt in the houses of all ruled by all the planets that are currently transiting Sagittarius. Okay, so it has a broader effect on top of the fact that it's in Sagittarius. It's ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, right? It's the planet of increase. He increases whatever he touches. So what happens is this new moon, these solar eclipses, the effects of them tend to be kind of outsized in relation to a normal new moon, or even what we might consider a normal eclipse. So it adds power, it adds influence. Many, many planets, the influence and power of them are added to the energy of the new moon. And so you'll want to take note, especially if you're going to be directly affected. We're going to talk a little bit about this last eclipse that we had. It was January 4th of this year. I don't know if any of you can think that far back, if you can remember, right after the beginning of the year. Check your sidereal natal chart for this eclipse, the one that's happening on the 26th of December, for planets and personal points at 9 degrees of Sagittarius or one of the other fire signs or an air sign. If you have a planet or point at or near 9 degrees, then yes, you will likely feel the effects of this eclipse personally. You would probably also feel it personally if you have Sagittarius Sun or Sagittarius Rising. And you may also feel significant effects of this eclipse if you have a planet or point at 9 degrees of Gemini, Pisces, or Virgo, which would be the opposite cardinal points, if you want to use that term, to Sagittarius, even though Sagittarius is not a cardinal sign. We're not talking about cardinal signs, but we are talking about compass points, right? So these other 3 signs, if you're going to feel the effect of this eclipse, it's going to be probably a lot more challenging. There's going to be a bit of tension and action that need to transpire in order to move you through whatever the eclipse is triggering. You won't be able to get through it without doing something. It's going to demand your attention and your action and your involvement. Although if you have it at one of the air or fire signs, unless it's in Sagittarius specifically, or in Gemini specifically, you probably will feel it a little more casually, shall we say. I mean, you might still feel it personally, you might still feel it directly, but it may not be as, I don't know what the word is I'm reaching for here. significant is not the word, but something like that. Let's go with that so we can move on. So check your chart for planets or personal points, like I was saying, at 9 degrees. Sagittarius, one of the other fire or air signs, or Gemini, Pisces, or Virgo. So let's talk a little bit about the current astrology. We have Mercury just joined Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter and the Sun and the Moon in Sagittarius, right? So we have all of these planets in Sagittarius. He just moved in there today. We have Mars moving into Scorpio tomorrow, right? And so Mars is a traditional ruler of Scorpio, so you might consider him quite comfortable there, even though Scorpio is a water sign. But just keep in mind, Mars is a little bit aggressive and fiery and tempestuous, and so when we mix him with an emotional sign like Scorpio, things can get a little heated. So just be kind of aware that we have that transit affecting a fellow fire planet at the same time we have this new moon taking place, this new moon solar eclipse taking place. So a few other interesting points about the astrology of this particular new moon. We have the stellium happening. That's significant. What we didn't have happening January 4th of this year was Jupiter combust the sun. Right now what we have is a Jupiter-Sun conjunction. And what a conjunction typically tends to do is enhance and magnify the energies of the planets involved, creating kind of like a resonance, maybe a dissonance, because, and I say that because the effect of a conjunction can be typically seen as either positive or negative, depending on how it plays out, but it's an intensification of the energies at play. They augment each other for good or ill. And just like Jupiter expands what he touches, that intensification, that expansion will also be for good or ill in this case, right? So Jupiter, that tight Sun-Jupiter conjunction creates a Jupiter combustion, right? So Jupiter being combust, we look at that a little bit differently. We tend to see the same type of energies play out that you would expect for a conjunction. However, I would say you could factor in a little bit more of a wild card quality to it. The enhancement of Jupiter's qualities is there, and the enhancement of the Sun's qualities is there, but not necessarily the enhancement of the better or best qualities, or what we might most consider admirable about the two, right? So it can enhance some of the more negative or less personable qualities of both planets, I guess, is how we could dance around it if we want to dance around it. But Jupiter ruling this particular eclipse from his home sign of Sagittarius, which is holding so many planets right now, that's Jupiter in essential dignity, right? He rules Sagittarius. So it's kind of like a king holding court. But that combust gives a wildcard quality to this particular new moon solar eclipse. And so that kind of can strip Jupiter of what we might consider his magnanimity, right? So he's maybe a little bit less likable of a character with this new moon. However, ride it, see what happens, because like I said, it's a little bit more unpredictable in terms of how it could play out. And with all that stellium energy going on, you never know what you might see. So Jupiter, like I said, he expands what he touches, and it can be for positive, it can be for negative. In this instance, that expansion is likely going to bring permanent change, right? That permanent change can affect many, many areas of your life. And let's talk specifically about which ones, right? So you would be looking to any house that's ruled by Gemini, Virgo, Cancer, Leo, Pisces, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, or Scorpio. So we're talking about nearly every house in your chart could feel the effects of whatever change is triggered by this particular solar eclipse, okay? So this is big change. This is big change. It is specifically a potential for problems caused by outsized egos and by over-identifying with things, getting too personal, Okay, so be aware of that. Try not to get overly identified with your own good ideas at this particular new moon, because individual recognition could be hard to come by. It's much more likely that individual contributions get lost in the noise of this eclipse. So try not to be too ego identified with your own really great ideas, right? Also, keep in mind with this particular new moon, there's a risk almost of too much of a good thing, if you want to put it that way. And we might also find that events that transpire related to this eclipse, that everything hinges on just one thing, or that perhaps there's more like a domino effect to events where some little cause has multiple effects or ripple effects. Okay, so watch for that type of a dynamic around this particular eclipse. Just due to the planetary activity that we have going on. So this particular new moon with this solar eclipse, you're going to want to take practical action in the real world in order to access the fortunate potential in this particular eclipse. You do need to take direct action. You can't just ride the wave and expect it to play out in a positive way for you. So I encourage you to have a plan for this new moon. And so in that regard, stick around, because what we're going to do after we go through which house this is falling in for each of you by rising sign in part 2, in part 3, we're going to go over the themes and archetypes of Gemini. We're going to go over some prompts that you can use in your intention setting with this eclipse, so that you can make a big new start for the coming year, for 2020. It's not too early, even though it's still 2019. It's not too early to make your start for 2020. So let's talk a little bit about last January 4th, when we had a new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius, right? So less than a year ago. And what we said back then, speaking of the astrology specific to that particular eclipse, we said that the exposure of secrets or lies or deception could cause loss and either change the parties in control of the situation or otherwise influence the outcome of a situation. And I'm curious to know in the comments if you'll share, was that true for you? Especially, was that true for you if you had a planet or point at 20 degrees of Sagittarius or other fire sign, or at 20 degrees of Pisces, Virgo, or Gemini? And I will tell you in my own personal experience, yes, that was absolutely true. Absolutely true, that the exposure of deception could trigger loss or change. It was crazy to see that play out over the year, and I didn't even really think about it in those terms until I went back earlier tonight. I was looking at my notes from the last new moon intention setting. That was the solar eclipse in Sagittarius from January, and I went, whoa, that was exactly it. So I wanted to follow up with y'all and ask you, please let me know in the comments if that was true for you. Was the exposure of secrets, lies, or deceptions a trigger for loss or a change of the parties in control of a situation? Like I was saying, if you have 20 degrees Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius, or another fire sign with a planet or point there. So this eclipse, one final note before we move on to taking a look at where this is falling in your chart for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. What I want you to know is you do need to make an extra effort to pay attention to details. It will be easy to overlook the details with this particular eclipse. So make an extra effort to pay attention to details. I would even say double and triple and quadruple check the small stuff. And if you do, it's much more likely to get you recognized than if you don't. Okay. So let's wrap up part 1 right there, and we'll move on to part 2. If you already are really familiar with your chart or with the houses in astrology and you don't need to review this, that's fine. You can take a break, go grab a beverage, refill your snack tray or something. I got my dinner in the tagine pot in the oven. My Christmas dinner is cooking while we're doing the live stream. But you could take a break and come back for part 3, where we go over the themes and archetypes of Sagittarius and the prompts for the new moon intention setting.